recording. I want to make another little video describing just music philosophy, piano philosophy. And I want to add an extension to what I was talking about in the first piano video I made, where I was talking about recursion. And first of all, I want to revise what I said. I remember I said the major scale is recursive because it's a pattern, and if you play that pattern, it repeats. That's melodic recursion. But the major scale, if you break it into a chord, you take every third note, right? That's like just the... It's not even displaying! Hang on. Is it displaying now? Okay. So, this would be the major scale broken into a chord, right? Now, the thing about this chord is it breaks a harmonic recursive pattern. So what do I mean? Major third, major third, minor third, minor third, major third. So it breaks that pattern. And this is why I think Dorian and Lydian are super cool, is because they keep the recursive harmonic pattern as well as a melodic pattern. So I think that I mean, it just makes like an upper structure that is continuous if you want to like extend the harmony. That would be a Dorian chord if you spread it out and then kept the pattern going. Obviously it stops right here for the entire scale, but if you kept the pattern going and you built up, you would have that. So yeah, the major scale harmonically is not recursive, like in terms of the thirds. And that leads me to my next topic of discussion, which is about chords that break this this recursive pattern. And those kinds of chords are why, or they can create tension. What do I mean? So any dominant chord that you have is a break in this pattern. So if I play just a C7, right here we have a major third, and then we have two minor thirds in a row. There's a break in the pattern. It's not major third, minor third, major third, minor third. It's two minor thirds in a row. That breaks the pattern. Or you could do two major thirds and then a minor third. We have tension that way too. So pretty much everything in my mind, like how I think about it, is tension is a break in the recursive pattern, and then like thick, dense harmony is just a recursive pattern. Simple harmony is when you just have simple triads. So like this stuff. That's just a simple triad. It's not super strenuous on the ear. It doesn't require like thought. It doesn't make you think that much compared to chords like this. It's got more like depth to it. Requires a little more thought for the listener to understand what's happening. And so, yeah, pretty much all tension is derived from the break and the recursive pattern. Another example I can think of would be the minor major 7, which I talked about in the first video. It has a recursive pattern in it. Like it has the Ogg triad, and then using that you can sub all these to get a minor major 7, right? So this is the bass note, and then you move in the same amount as this triad here. But if you look at it, it starts with a minor third, and then it's two major thirds, right? And so there's a break in a recursive pattern there. Now, the only thing, I guess, is that there is some tension in if you repeat the same kind of third, right? So like a diminished seventh, full diminished, has natural tension. An Ogg triad has natural tension. And those are recursive, right? So I think I don't know. I guess my philosophy behind it is you gotta have mix-ups, you know. If you're doing the same thirds, or it's not mixing up the pattern enough to be quote unquote stable. So yeah. Whereas like just regular triads like major and minor, they got a mix of the two. They got a minor third and a major third, or a major third and a minor third, major third, minor third, or minor third, major third. So that's pretty cool. Um, yeah, I don't know. I'm just kind of rambling. But also, what I wanted to do was talk about. Let me open up my notepad here. Other chords that break this pattern are sus chords, right? So like if you have a sus2 over like a root, that breaks the pattern, right? Because it's not just typical thirds. But you could kind of make it recursive if you do stacked fourths or fifths. It depends on how you want to voice it, I guess. And then, of course, in jazz, alt chords, you know, like sharp 5, flat 9 chords. So, like this. I think that's a sharp 5, flat 9. Yeah. C7, sharp 5, flat 9. That breaks the pattern. And then that's when you got, like, different triads up top, triad pairs or whatever. Okay, now I want to talk about how I interpret playing the piano in a more general sense than like a theoretical or mathematical sense. How I approach the piano, and I'm originally a bass player, upright bass player, so most of my interpretation as far as music goes is from that perspective. With the bass player, if you're watching me like play, oh, you can't even see these chords, dang it. If you're watching me play, you'll notice I'm always playing like the roots or the fifth root, because in my mind as a bass player, you have to have that bottom. If you don't have the bottom, then it's just like, what are you doing? You know, that chord is not gonna feel full. You know, sometimes I'll go like, you know, I'll play like little high notes, or like sometimes I'll go way up here. But I mean, in my mind, if you want to if you're trying to play it, like I like to play songs that I listen to, and I'm trying to match that. So I'm always playing like the roots, you know, on my left hand, and in the right hand I'm playing the chords, and then I'm singing the melody. That's how I approach the piano, and I guarantee I'm not the only person that does that. But essentially, how I think about it is you have the root, and you have a triad on top. It could be any triad you want that kind of shapes the harmony. And then you're singing the melody in your voice. So, yeah, one of my favorite songs to play is Montana by Frank Zappa. And at the ending, right, and then the bass just. So I'm just playing triads on the right and then bass notes on the left. And then I'd be like, Montana, and I'm singing the melody. And then rarely do I like improvise singing while improvising on the keys, you know. So I have experimented with like singing improvised notes over chords, like just playing chords. So, okay. The last thing I want to talk about in this video is how I compose Little 7, applying the stuff that I just talked about. So, and it kind of applies like all the stuff that I talked about in my first video and that I talked about now. So I start with the bass intro on upright bass, and it's just like a little G minor stuff, you know. And it's got like really how I started when I made this song was I started with the just the original bass line. So that's what I came up with on upright bass. And then I was like, okay, this is in 7, so let's call it Little 7. um, so so from there, um, I was like, okay, let's do a little intro. So I was like, let's do like an upright bass G minor intro, and then in there I wanted to hit like this note, because the bass line goes down, right? And I kind of think of it as like a little. It's kind of in Phrygian, but it's also kind of in minor. So it's a little. It's like a mix between the two. So sometimes I want to hit this note, you know. Sometimes I want to hit this note over G minor. Yeah. So then after that, I thought of the chords. Well, I also thought when I was making the form with the bass, I made the bass line. And I was like, okay, let's do like a little C funk section, and then we'll go back to the top. That's how I made the form, was on bass. So starting with the bass line. And then I also, all right. I kind of just, I need to start over. I'm getting ahead of myself. So, I started with that, and then I thought, okay, let's do it the same thing but in major. Back to minor. And then I was like, okay, I want the bridge, or like the next section, to be C. So how can I get there? So then I just translated the ideas chromatically. Like that. So it was in the first like part. And I was like, okay, I need to get to C, so I'm just gonna go up chromatically till I get there. And then that's how I got there. And so I was like, that's pretty cool. And then that was it. I was like, okay, let's do a little C funk in this section, and then we'll go back to the top. So that's how I made the form of the song, and I didn't have any harmony in mind when I did it on bass. And when I play bass, like when I make bass lines for songs, if I start on bass, then I never ever like think about the chords until like I'm doing it on piano. I'm just thinking about like cool roots to play on bass that I think would be interesting. So I'm not really thinking about the harmony too much, unless I'm kind of like messing around, you know. Then I'll kind of think about what chords I want to do. Like when I went to major, I had the idea that I wanted that to go to major, but that was pretty much it when I made the bass line. So then I was like, okay, I was sitting at my piano and I was like, it's time to make the chords. So I came up with this bass line is minor, right? So I was like, okay, let's just do a little G minor 7, because that's what it is. This is in G. And then at the time when I made this song, this was like such a cool chord to me. A flat over B flat. I just thought it was so cool. And so then I was like, okay, let's just take that triad and move it down tonally with the key signature. So, because it's like kind of G Phrygian, like I was saying. So I'm moving it down tonally, the triads, like that. And so it's like really like upper structure stuff. This is kind of like an inverted chord, or like F minor over A flat or whatever. But yeah, this is like an upper chord. This is an upper chord. This would be like an inverted chord. And it's nice nice because it goes like it voice leads to that G minor 7 really well. The B flat triad on top of G. It just voice leads really nicely. So I was like, that works out. That's cool, you know. So then here in my mind, I was like, okay, we're going to major. So then I just need to play this chord, but major, like that. So. And so then here I was thinking, okay, well, I just flipped the quality. It was in minor, now it's major. So then for those other triads, when I go down like this, let's just flip those triads. That's what I thought. So if they were minor, make them major, and if they were major, make them minor. That's what I thought. So then it comes down to flipped. So notice I flipped those chords. So it's A flat minor over B flat, which sounds kind of dissonant. G major over A. F over A flat, also dissonant. But it's got like a, oh man. That is loud thunder. I don't know if you can hear that. It has like a, it's a nice little rub, you know, there's some rubbing going on. Some nice rubbing going on there. But the thing is, the chords aren't around super long, so that tension doesn't marinate too long. It's just kind of a little tickle the ear, you know, a little spice in the ear. So I'm going to play that section again. To get to the bridge, remember how I said it was chromatic? I just took this chord, and then I moved it up chromatically like that. So I'm just transposing it essentially. Okay, yeah. So then for the bridge, when I was making the bass line, I was like, yeah, I want this to be funky. So what's a funky chord? This is like a C13 sus or whatever. But really, I'm thinking about it as like, I'm just thinking of a sus chord, yeah. So I'm not thinking of a third, like a major minor third over the C. I'm pretty much just thinking about like these notes, but not an E. So like those kind of notes, and then I'm putting like funky rhythm on it, right? But that's the harmonic language for the keyboard part at this octave. So from here to here, that's the language. But then when I went back and thought about like the other parts, like the synth parts, there's like little vibrating synths. I was thinking, okay, if I'm up here, let's do it in major with those accompanying parts, because they're at a higher range. So at this range, it's going to be in the key of C major, whereas down here, it's in the key of B flat, just over that C. And so, like, if you want to think about it from the circle of fifths perspective, here's B flat, and then we go up a fifth, and in this region it would be an F, and then in this region it would be in C, like that. That's how I thought about it. But when you hear it, it's got like some rubbing going on. You know, you got this B flat, you got that, you got this, you got that going on. But I think overall it sounds fine because it's going off of like a recursive harmonic idea. So it builds and it sounds really full and like bright. So yeah, if you listen to like the vibrating synths, it's going like in the song, and then the keyboard is going just improvised funk rhythms, and then the bass is just going crazy like the top. Okay, now we get to the melody. I was thinking I need like some idea that's melodic, and I really don't know how I came up with this, but I knew I wanted to have parallel fourths because I thought that would be sick. And I found this idea. I heard that. Well, maybe it was. That was what it is. That was the first one. So it was. I came up with that idea first. And then I was just like, okay, that goes to the root, so that's cool. But let's put it in a parallel fourth just to see how it sounds. And so then I came up with. And that's just cool. I mean, I don't know how else to describe it. Okay, the second display's on. I don't know how else to describe that other than I just think that's pretty cool. And I don't know where else it came from there. And then. So then that was the idea for this G minor chord. And then the walk down, I was thinking of it kind of from like a classical perspective. Like you have one part that's one instrument, and then you have like a call, and then in a different section you have a different instrument that's like a response. And this is, I think, one of the few songs where I do that compositionally. I can't really think of anything like consciously, I guess. Maybe I've done it unconsciously, but yeah. So I was like, okay, I need a good little response to this idea, and then it needs to go over this B flat. So then I was thinking, okay, what's the tonal triad that would go over a B flat? And then I was thinking, okay, I could play this, or I could play this, like B flat 7. That would be G Phrygian, and B flat 7. So I just came up with, and then so that's like how I got that melody, was just a triad. And then I just thought, okay, let's go down, let's just go parallel with it. And then I was like, okay, that's a common tone. That C is a common tone between those chords. You could try it that way. Even though in the keyboard part it's going, so that C is common with this, but it is not common with this chord. So it's kind of like a color tone, which is pretty cool. So again, to recap, it goes. Like that. I wanted the fifth to be in there with the A flat, and then it leads down chromatically, like the fifth, it just follows the roots, and it's cool because it's got like a nice minor sound, right? It's got that G Phrygian kind of sound. So yeah, and then, so remember, it's like this. It goes to the major 7 there, G major. And in that part, I couldn't think of like I couldn't think of like a between those two melody lines that I made. I couldn't think of like a response or like I don't know. I wasn't thinking of like, okay, I need another melody here. I was just thinking like, I don't want there to be a melody. I just want there to be like an effect, and that matches like the G major 7. So then I came up with this like B sus chord, but really, really high. And I was like, oh, that's just sick, I've heard like in a lot of people that I like to listen to, like Steely Dan, Monk, Zappa, they really, for some reason, like either this chord, or like this specifically. It seems like in Zappa and Montana, he uses that and the little like that, and then Monk uses it in Introspection. He uses it there, and then Steely Dan uses it in like Your Gold Teeth too. It's really this chord, but take out that third, and then it's basically the same. And so to me, I was just like, that's just like the idea, Before I even thought of Lil Seven, I was just like, that little clump right here, that's just like, that's the shit, man. So I was thinking, what a little effect can I put over this G major 7 chord that fills the space but is not melodic? And then I was like, oh my gosh, that little thing is perfect. Oh shit, that is very loud. I'm kind of like on the left side of the piano. I'm not centered because of my mic, so I'm fucking it up. But it's just like, ooh, that's just like clean. So, yeah. And also it's like a Lydian chord. You got the major 7, and then you got the sharp 4, so it's nice and pretty. And then that's like the beautiful like resting place, and then it gets back to the tension with a, yeah, so you got those rubbing chords in there. I think that's pretty much it. Like, I got the idea for the little synth wigglies that are like playing this over the C chord. I just wanted to like tickle the ears, and I was like, let's get some dense harmony in there, some scaffolded harmony. So that's pretty much where that came from. Um, I'm trying to think of the and then I don't know, like with the percussion, I'm gonna be honest, like percussion is not my thing, like drums, and I'm just not really. I think rhythmically, but I don't think in drums. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Um, so yeah, um, I just kind of was messing around with the drums, honestly, just playing with it, and then sometimes I hit the random cowbell sample, and then the triangle sample. That triangle sample is actually pretty good. Um, so yeah, I have thought about doing like Lil 7 with live instruments, like all real, like a saxophone for that melody, and then like playing bass, I'd play upright bass, and then it'd be piano and they're playing the chords, right? And then I have a triangle, so I can do that. And I don't know, it would be a lot, but yeah, that honestly is one of my most proudest songs because it felt very organic and spontaneous. Like it didn't feel like I had to like plan out a whole lot. I just started with one idea, and then I was like, okay, I'm gonna build on this, and then I got the next idea, and it just like worked out very, very intuitively. So I'm really proud of that one, and I was that's why I wanted to talk about it. It's one of my popular songs for my dedicated listeners out there. So yeah, um, there's another philosophy concept that I have in my notes, and um, maybe I should make another video about it. I don't know. Yeah, I'll leave it on a cliffhanger. So anyone that actually watches this video can be excited for another one. Um, and this seems like it was a long video, and it was very, just from the dome. Oh, it's only about 30 minutes. That's not too long. Hopefully you learned something about how I think about the piano. Hopefully the levels turned out okay. I'm hoping. I kind of just did all this without like checking. So we're going to see. But yeah, that's more piano philosophy. Let me know if you enjoyed this. If you got any questions, leave a comment and I can answer it. I will say a lot of what I know about music theory. So I hate using the word music theory or theory because I mean, Adam Ely made a video, how it's just like one concept of music, and people think it's like, yep, this is just like it's all theoretical, right? But really, music isn't like that. It's a very organic, mystical thing, and I think to just succumb to it having rules and just following rules is just a it's just a settled mindset. You're just settling, and I don't think you should settle for anything. You should try and reach the as far as you can, take it as far as you can, whatever it is that you like to do. So yeah, but how I learned all this stuff was on my own, except I took like classical AP music theory in high school, and then I kind of just from there took that and then built upon it with the piano just by playing. And I was just like looking at the keys. One thing that I noticed that I think is very useful is to not think about like sharps and flats, and instead, this is just my opinion on what I think is useful. To not think about sharps and flats, but just think about like there are big notes, which is the bass, right? Like this is a big note, and then what's a pattern that you would play over that to make it sound a certain way? So the major scale is like a certain pattern, right? That's the pattern. You don't have to think about like, okay, it's this is F sharp, this is G sharp, this is A sharp, this is B, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp. Like that's just stupid, man. You don't have to think about it. I don't like to think about it that way. I'm just looking and I'm just like, okay, this is the pattern I would do to make it sound this way. Or this is the pattern I would do to make it sound this way. Right? Or this is the pattern I would do to make it sound this way. Right? It's just like different patterns. And then they look a certain way, or you can feel how they feel in your hands, or whatever instrument you're playing. I just talked a lot. I need to catch my breath. Yeah, I'm excited. Anyway, yeah, I think we were talking about this last night, me and my roommate, how it should just be numbers. Like it shouldn't be letters because we just stop at G. And he was right. He said that. He's like, we just stop at G. It's stupid. And I was just like, yeah. If it was numbers, you could just be like, all right, it's in 6, We're in the key of 6, and then 6 major, the pattern of 6 major, I don't know. But I do like the idea of thinking of like the sharps and flat notes as just like their own thing. I don't think of them as like an alteration of a G or like an F. I try to think of it as like its own thing. It's like its own note, its own place, right? That's how I think about it. And then whatever, that's your starting place, that's your big note, and then you just put a pattern over it. That's what I think about it. And then from there, when I learned that on piano, I was like, okay, well then now I never have to think about sharps or flats, like all the adjustments or whatever. Instead, I just think about it as a pattern. And then I was thinking about, okay, what are the natural like triads of the pattern, which is what you learn in AP classical theory. And then it's like, okay, well then what are some like just out of the key signature triads you could put on top? And then it's like, okay, well you can put like odd chords, or you can put like diminished chords, like random diminished chords. And then what I realized is like since the diminished chord is recursive and it divides the octave like it's the most tones within an octave, like an even spacing, it resolves like perfectly to any chord you want, any major or minor chord you want. So you can just slap this baby over any root you want, like you can do that, and then you can be like, all right, we're going to B flat 7, and it's just like, what? Like it just works, And then that would be like a classical thing, but it's a classical idea, or actually that would be a kind of a jazz thing because it's a 2/5, but it's a classical 1, not a jazz 1. But then, yeah, I was like, I can use this to go from any place I want to any other place. It's like the perfect glue. And then I realized any chord can be like that. You just got to be clever about how you want to do it. You just gotta be. You just gotta use your imagination. You just gotta be. Oh, nice. The display was working. You just gotta like. You just gotta just try. You know. You gotta force it. Um, there was a video about Zappa, a little documentary, and George Duke talked about him, and he was like, he would force ideas to go together that like I would think wouldn't work. And that's the thing. Like you just gotta decide that you want to do it, and that's what Monk did, and that's just like what everyone does, you know. All the greats in music, in my mind, they're not caring about like how it's supposed to be. They're just like, I'm gonna take this idea, and I'm gonna take this idea, and I'm gonna find a way to make it work, you know. I'm gonna do whatever it takes. So, all right, I kind of just rambled for a few minutes. Um, Again, I hope you learned something, and I had fun. And yeah, if you got any questions, you can leave a comment, and I'll answer them. And you're probably not going to, but that's fine because I don't really. I'm just getting these thoughts out of my head for any person that wants to know, or maybe like if I in the future if I forget, you know, I can look back and be like, oh yeah, you know. So anyway, that's it. I'm gonna stop the video now. Bye bye.